Hello, my name is Tsar Andrei, and welcome to an overview for Chernarus Survival: The Collapse. The first thing that we can see upon this map is that we have several different starting positions for each of the squads that are available to play as. Squad 2 in the southwest, Squad 1 in the southeast, Squad 3 in the northeast, and Squad 4 kind of starting in the middle. They all functionally work about the same, and they all use the same set of loadouts. The squad leader will be a forester equipped with an AK. I accidentally screwed up something in the loadout so that you have Makarovs for whatever reason, but we can ignore that for now. Anyway, the forester will look like this. He'll be wielding an AKS, that is an AK-47 with a folding stock, not an AKM, with 2 magazines, and his other 3 squad mates will be armed with this weapon. As we can see, the villager has here the CZ550, I believe it is, and something like what this one is currently wearing. It is a hunting rifle, high-powered, but it is given to the other 3 squad members to compensate and make it difficult to survive in this mode, which is, as you could probably imply from the title, sort of the point, is that you do want to make an attempt to survive as well as you can, but I did what I could to keep it from being far too difficult to make any progress. You will always start out with something, though you will not have any food, any body armor, and only the first 2 squad members, it looks like, will have any sort of external storage capacity. But you'll find plenty of things among the raiders who will attack you throughout any given run, I suppose you can say, and there are plenty of respawns located throughout the map. We've got 2 things here that are to be shown to you. First is the Chernarus army holdout. I'm just going through this in the editor now. There will be some gameplay slightly later on. Anyway, what I was saying is that here in the Chernarus army holdout, we have a decent amount of Chernarus self-defense force soldiers holding out here, and there is a box with some bonus equipment, we'll say, in there, as well as whatever you would manage to loot off of these guys. So obviously, attacking something like this, you'd want to be well prepared, because while I'm fairly certain that these guys do not have any form of body armor, they do have decent camouflage, decent weapons, and there's somewhere around 20 of them. I don't think I've ever counted, but there's a decent amount of them that you'll be facing. There are 2 more that I'm not going to show you. 2 more locations by the military, one owned by United States MARSOC and another one owned by Russian Spetsnaz, but I'm not going to show you where they are just for the sake of that being a little bit of a surprise, and because there are much more valuable things there. Granted, you're not going to really find them unless you look for them, and nothing they have is necessarily mission critical. Now we have here in Petrovka the PMC hideout, which is much more heavily defended, as you can probably tell. There are quite a large amount of these PMCs operating here, as you can see. I did have to use CSAT officers to make these guys loyal to Red 4 forces, or Op 4, I suppose. Mostly because all player characters in this mode are considered independents, as are the PMCs by default. So I had to make sure that they would actually be hostile to the player, which, admittedly, while it looks kind of weird here, you will not see the CSAT officers when playing, because I've set their probability of presence to 0, so it's nothing you need to worry about. Anyway, this place is much more heavily fortified. There will be patrols along this general location, and you definitely will not want to attack this until you are very prepared and you have a lot of good equipment and body armor, because there are a lot of them, and these guys, unlike the Chernarus soldiers, do have body armor. So they will be a much tougher target. Now here, the target that you'd be aiming for is right up here, this supply box, which contains a very large amount of resources, some of which you may not even need once you manage to loot what all of these guys contain. Now, one thing I should mention is that there are two versions of this. There's the one without zombies and the one with zombies. We're currently looking at the one without, which has a larger percentage of AI raiders that will come to attack you, but a obviously a much smaller percentage of zombies because there are none. In the zombie mode, there will be a decent mix of zombies, and their presence does reduce the amount of actual bandit AI, so it really just depends on your preference. I find both to be very fun. It really just depends on what sort of experience you're looking for, and it's very easy to swap in between, maybe have two different saves going on. Anyway, the next thing I'm going to review is the respawn points. As you can see, these are scattered all the way around, but they are kept very far away from this PMC controlled town. So if you are going to go here, you have to be very ready to be sure that you're able to commit to the mission. The Chernarus army holdout does have a little bit of a gap in between them, but generally speaking, you'll be able to respawn relatively near to wherever you die, and you'll respawn with what you started with, not with what you had. So if you had valuable resources on you, you will have to go and get them back or have one of your teammates retrieve them. There is a 5-minute respawn curve though, so you will be down for 5 minutes. So assuming your entire squad does not die, you should theoretically be alright. Now we're going to jump into some gameplay as I explain some other things that may be important. Well, actually, no, we are not. I'm going to first review your goal. Your goal is to make it to this UN checkpoint, which is very far away from any starting point, and even further so any other respawn position. These soldiers are friendly to you and will not shoot at you. They should be large enough in number to fend off any real attacks. So once you get here, you should be safe because they will fight pretty much anything that attempts to attack you, because they are technically on your side, though they will likely shoot at you if you attack them. Just walk into this trigger zone and you will succeed the mission. The one other thing that I will add as I go over here and show you kind of the general idea of, let's see, Squad 4's starting position, or we'll just go over here, is that the 4 squads, while you are technically all part of Team Independent, are not required nor encouraged to work together. It is actually much more fun if you play competitively. Whether that means you shoot at each other or not is kind of up to you. I'd say you should, just to add that little bit of extra dynamic fun. And I would say in most cases the winner should be considered to be whichever squad makes it to the checkpoint first. Also, another thing I will mention is that the map we are using is Chernarus Redux. It is laid out like the regular Chernarus. There are a lot more things like this, Rex, you can search almost everything, and now we will jump into some gameplay. Now as we look here, you'll see all the different positions that we have to respawn. We have our markers here in the PMC control town and the UN checkpoint. These were just made so that way these tasks aren't always showing up on your screen. You know where it is, right here, UN checkpoint, and that's where you have to go. But you don't have to have the annoying things sticking around all the time. Anyway, as you respawn, you can pick any of these places. Respawn delay is 15 seconds. And we will spawn near Chernarus in the factory. And as we load in here, we will see a general squad leader's loadout as soon as the game stops freaking out on me. So this is kind of an industrial area. You're not going to find quite as much loot in an industrial area as you will in, say, civilian buildings or especially in a military outpost. But there are many cases in which you will be able to find some things. I'm going to try and loot something and maybe start a couple firefights. I do have MCC enabled, just for the sake of making it easier for me to find someone to fight here for the recording, but MCC is not required nor necessarily even encouraged for you to have while playing. Two things that I would recommend are enhanced movement. It just I'd recommend enhanced movement for almost anything you do in Arma. And I would also recommend another mod that I've forgotten at the present, but if I remember it, I will definitely mention it. Anyway, stamina has been turned off to prevent the annoyance, and given the fact that you will be traveling a lot, I figured it was simply an inconvenience, and since there's no access to the arsenal, there is no, spamming of equipment. Now here, we found something here a Ural truck. If we were just to jump in here and analyze it, we can see that we're missing a wheel and we're low on fuel. You can find things with the Ravage mod that is included to help repair this, give it some fuel, and actually put another wheel on it. And having a vehicle will definitely help you throughout your journey, but you will very rarely find some that are intact. I set the percentage of vehicles that will be completely intact to around 8%. I almost said 18, but that would be wrong. 8% will be fully intact. As you can see here, you can search many things. Some will be things like trucks. There are lots of furniture and buildings that you can search as well. And completely busted, like this vehicle's, it's fairly undrivable in its current, well, it's missing a wheel. I guess you could technically drive it. It's also almost out of fuel. But vehicles that are completely and totally wrecked can in many situations be looted. And if we look on the MCC panel here, because this always shows me things, an enemy squad has spawned over there to our northeast. Now we're just going to explore around a bit. I'll show you a bit of the gameplay you'll be looking at, and also one thing I'll show you, you do have health, nutrition, and hydration. Generally speaking, eating and drinking will not become very important unless you're carrying a large amount of things on you, and especially as you get later into the game, it will become a larger problem. Especially if you do not establish a stash somewhere. It is likely a good idea, since clearing of items is turned off, which may be slightly bad for performance, but for the actual gameplay I thought was personally the best idea. So you can set a stash somewhere. If you can find a building where you want to keep things, you can set everything there, especially if there's a respawn point next to it. You just really don't want to let anybody who's not part of your squad find it. I found that it's worked very well for me, as I'd go out with certain spawn equipment, fight a couple AI raiders, and then I'd come back with the good things and go out again. This will often result in you dying many times given your complete lack of body armor and generally subpar equipment. For example, the AKS is about the worst performing Kalashnikov variant weapon that you can use. It is heavier than an AKM even with the wooden stock. And it has significantly less range and accuracy than the other ones. But, you know, you can obviously still kill people with it relatively quickly considering how powerful it is. Anyway, while I continue to word vomit, I will say the hunting rifle does work pretty well. So I would not say that anybody on your squad who is using the hunting rifle is necessarily at a disadvantage. Though I suppose in a close range situation you would not necessarily want to be using one. Now, as you may notice, actually finding things in containers is relatively rare. A lot of your loot is going to come from killing raiders and or each other. And that's part of the risk-reward system that is mostly intentionally set up here. It is obviously much less of a risk for me to be running around this building and searching through things than it would be to go out in a gunfight. But obviously if I go out into a gunfight and win, then I will get much better stuff. And especially considering that I don't have anything other than what I started with, it wouldn't even be a bad idea. So, given that, I'm going to go out, start a gunfight, and then I'll show you a bit of the Outbreak variant of this mod. And then that should be about it. Alright, well now we're likely about to enter our first gunfight here with some raiders. Looks like we already got two of them. Generally speaking, these guys won't be wearing much body armor either. So killing them is not necessarily going to be a difficult thing. The difficult thing is surviving. And I guess that is kind of the priority of this. This is meant to be basically a better than DayZ kind of mission. Because, you know, I'm not charging you. And it's just, the idea is just to be, I don't know. Anyway, the idea is not necessarily to kill, it is to survive. So as you can see, killing is not necessarily so difficult here. I can take his equipment. You can take some of the things like empty cans, you can refill them. Generally speaking, if there's something you don't know how to do, look at the Ravage Wikia page for the Ravage mod. That will explain most of the things that I haven't covered here. And now that I've found this objectively better gun, the AKS-74, and I'm going to go ahead and swap that, but I am going to stick the AKS in my bag. That is something that I generally recommend doing, is that if you once you get a bag, put other guns in it. You can generally carry around 3 primary weapons, and probably only 1 secondary. So we've covered our first thing, we've got a better gun now. a much better gun looking at that recoil. And we're already kind of well on our way. Are we really so close to going and attacking the PMC controlled town or making our way to the checkpoint? Probably not, but that's the idea. You've got to build up over time. So now I'm going to go over to the Outbreak version of this mod, and I'll show you what there is that is different there and what you should expect in contrast to playing some of the Collapse. Alright, well, now we are here in the Outbreak, and you may notice that one thing for sure is very different. And I set the weather to be a much more dark thing, because this is meant to be after the White Plague is released, as is kind of part of the DayZ sort of canon. Whatever you would suppose to call it. But it is a much darker atmosphere. And the main thing that is different here about this PMC-controlled town is that there's actually a helicopter, because you don't go to a UN security checkpoint. In this world, there is Chernarus is quarantined, so your goal is just to completely escape Chernarus. You just got to get out, and what's a better way to get out of a completely quarantined country that you're not really supposed to be leaving? And that's to take a helicopter and fly to the supply zone. So now your final objective is either managing to somehow get here by land, despite likely being attacked by God knows what in the forests, especially considering that the zombies sure do love forests and coming up behind you out of nowhere. Or you can just attack the PMC town, hopefully win and make it here. As for whether or not this is more difficult than the Collapse, I am not entirely sure. It really depends on your playstyle, I suppose. I'd say you have to be much more on your feet in this variant, due to the fact that zombies can in some cases sneak up on you and they can enter buildings, and they are very numerous. So you cannot sit in a building and wait. You do have to keep eyes on the door. They will come for you, and they will not have any mercy for you. They generally kill you very quickly as well, I should mention. Another thing that changes due to that is that if any human, whether that be a player or an AI, is killed by a zombie, after about a minute they will rise up and become a zombie themselves. This means that if you are killed by a zombie, your zombie form will be wandering around. While this may mean that you can get your stuff back slightly easier, depending on whether you consider killing a zombie to be easier than getting back to wherever you were, it does mean that whatever weapon you are holding is going to be left on the ground. So hopefully whatever weapon you're holding wasn't that important, or you know where it was. So keep that in mind if you're ever killed by a zombie and you're trying to get your stuff back. Other than that, this mode behaves very similarly. Rex will spawn just as often, and I'll jump in to show you a little bit of what to expect from the zombies. Then we'll close it out. One thing I neglected to mention before this is that these markers showing the starting positions are technically more of suggestions. You won't necessarily start off here, but they are recommended for at least your first spawn, just so that way you don't have squads killing each other over and over and over again. This is meant to be kind of a world where you exist in the same location, but not one where the players are actively fighting a war with each other. This is a survival mode, not a war mode, I suppose. Anyway, now we're here. As you can see, much darker tone. The color filter is still the same. Let's see if we can spot some undead. I'll probably just spawn a couple in to show you what they're like. Alright, I've spawned a couple in directly to my south, and one thing you should note about the zombies is that if you fire at them, they will call in more. There will be more zombies that will show up relatively close to you. And some of them are heading towards me right now, and I can't see them. And that is slightly disconcerting and very concerning. That much I can say for sure. Where are they? Help me. I'm scared. Anyway. Once I see them, I can hear them first. That is generally what will happen. They will actually sometimes carry loot if they used to be a person. And some of them will run. Most of them will walk. And some of them will come at you from behind, and you will never have heard it coming. They also do not let you get revived. While AI will take mercy on you if you go and bleed out, zombies will not. They are very unforgiving. So if you're going to make a conscious decision to avoid them rather than shoot at them, be sure that you're avoiding all of them and not just some of them, because then something like that will happen. That was not intentional. That was not meant to even be an example. But that is just kind of what happens. So zombies are quite an interesting case, considering you shoot them, more come, but if you don't shoot them, they can kill you. So there, take that. Now, I am going to, just because that happened, I'm going to show you what happens as my zombie rises from the dead. Hopefully without dying again myself. And, also one thing that I would recommend is playing mostly in first person, but you don't necessarily have to. So as you can see, my zombie self is rising. He's evidently not very interested in me, but I'll go ahead and shoot him anyway. And I can still take everything that I had on me. You will keep all of your stuff, but as you can see, my gun was left here. Wait, is that my... I don't know, it wasn't on me. Anyway, your gun will be left where you die. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out with... for one thing, I hope that I did a decent job at presenting this mod to you. There are a ton of things that I had to leave out just for the short of making this relatively concise. I'm already going to cut out some of what I've said. And I will be doing more Arma 3 missions in the future, whether exactly like this, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. If you've got suggestions for another map that you'd like me to do a survival/zombie thing, because the survival mode is based more on Escape from Tarkov, this more from DayZ. But I'm willing to do more of either on most maps, assuming I can find a decent place to put some things and make it dynamic. Obviously on Stratus it would be a little harder to do things because there's just a lot less on Stratus, but with a really nice map like this, it's very easy to get creative with how things are placed and up. Because I do, considering that I rely on Ravage, have to do some more creative things to separate this from other Ravage missions. Anyway, looks like some people over there are shooting at the zombies. That's a good way to identify them. Anyway, now that I've said that for about the third time, thank you for watching. If you want to see more Arma 3 related stuff, more Arma 3 related mods, or even just a bunch of other gaming or just kind of random stuff that I do, please consider subscribing. I upload 3 days a week, very consistently. I haven't missed a day in several months. And, yeah, hopefully I'll see you on my channel, and if nothing else, I hope you enjoy this mission. So, until next time, bye-bye.